You disappeared. Not with rage, not with chaos, not with explanations or warnings. You just stopped showing up. You went ghost. And now her world feels different, louder, colder, heavier, because something she took for granted isn't there anymore. Not your body, your energy. She thought you'd always be around, always replying, always forgiving, always waiting. But now, you're a ghost. And what she feared the most is now her reality. You were the gravity holding her world together. Now she's spinning, alone. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming power, rebuilding your identity, and respecting your time and energy like your life depends on it, because it does. I'm creating something every man needs, the Stoic Relationship Blueprint, the first ebook built to equip you with emotional discipline, real masculine strength, and red pill clarity in a world trying to make men soft, predictable, and powerless. Modern men are drained, disrespected, and discarded for doing everything they thought was right. And no one's talking about the real cure. This blueprint? It's dropping in a few days. And if you don't grab it, don't be surprised when you find yourself forgotten in the inbox of someone who never valued you. Comment, "Mystery is power," if you're ready to know why being too available is a disaster. Number 1. Attachment destroys respect. The moment you make her the center of your thoughts, the heartbeat of your schedule, the reason behind every decision you make, you begin a silent erosion of the masculine presence that once made you attractive. She felt something for you at first, not because you were needy or available, but because your energy had structure, your purpose had shape, and your world had direction that wasn't wrapped around her. And when that shape collapses, when your mission dilutes into pleasing her, when your clarity bends under the weight of chasing her moods, her validations, her attention, you lose not just her interest, you lose her respect. That loss doesn't happen with an announcement. It happens when your texts get shorter responses, when your presence starts to feel like background noise, when she looks at you and no longer feels the spark she used to because you've handed her all your emotional authority. And it's subtle but soul-crushing when the man who once walked like a storm now stands like a shadow in his own story. Think about the last time you said yes when everything in you was screaming no, when you cancelled your priorities to accommodate someone who wouldn't do the same. That wasn't love. That was self-abandonment disguised as loyalty. Women don't lose interest because you cared. They lose interest because you collapsed. You gave her a throne she never asked for, then blamed her when she stopped seeing you as a king. If you want to be respected, you must risk being alone. If you want to be desired, you must be willing to walk away. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, kills masculine presence like emotional over-availability. Stop texting back within seconds. Stop needing her to validate every move. Stop tying your mood to her behavior. A man who can't stand firm when she pulls away is a man who has built his identity on unstable ground. And deep down, she knows it. She knows that if she loses interest, you'll panic. That if she doesn't reply, you'll double text. That if she flirts with someone else, you'll try harder. And that predictability doesn't make her feel loved, it makes her feel smothered. Understand this. If she knows exactly what you'll do next, she stops wondering. And once she stops wondering, she stops desiring. The path back to her desire isn't found in more giving. It's found in getting back to your mission, in placing your time where it's valued, not drained. In waking up every day and asking yourself, what would the man I respect do right now? That man doesn't chase. That man doesn't beg. That man builds, sharpens, evolves. That man lets go of attachment, not because he doesn't feel, but because he values his direction more than her approval. That man may lose her for a while, but the man who never loses himself always leaves a mark. Number 2. Detachment creates mystery. She used to wait for your messages. She used to wonder where you were, what you were thinking, who you were becoming. But over time, the wondering stopped. Not because she stopped caring, but because you stopped giving her the space to care. You were always there, always replying, always showing up to remind her that you hadn't left. And in doing so, you became expected. And the expected is never exciting. Now think about this. When was the last time you left a conversation unfinished, not out of spite, but because you had something greater pulling you forward? A purpose you were loyal to, not a person. That gap in conversation, that delay in response, that absence of explanation, that's where mystery is born. Not in manipulation, not in games, but in discipline. A man who is driven, who is present in his craft, who doesn't need to broadcast his every move, he becomes unpredictable in the most powerful way, because she can't place him. And the mind, when it can't place someone, begins to imagine. And when she begins to imagine, she begins to desire. That desire doesn't come from flashy gestures or poetic texts. It comes from depth, from contrast, from knowing you're emotionally available, but not emotionally predictable. That's what she longs for, but rarely experiences. You ever wonder why she keeps thinking about the guy who barely said a word, who was there and then gone, who didn't chase but still haunts her thoughts? It's not because he was better, it's because he wasn't fully figured out. He was a puzzle without the corner pieces. He had layers, he had stillness, he had restraint. You want to be unforgettable? Make her work to know you. Make her wonder how you think. Make her uncertain whether your attention today means she's earned more tomorrow, not out of arrogance, but because your attention is expensive, and nothing expensive is ever handed out for free. She shouldn't feel like she owns your time. She should feel like she's renting it, month to month, based on her consistency, her loyalty, her depth. You don't chase loyalty, you reward it. And you don't explain your detachment to earn sympathy. You detach because you're building, because you're a man with blueprints, not breadcrumbs. She will notice the shift. She'll sense the change. She may even accuse you of being cold, but it's not coldness, it's clarity. You are no longer willing to trade your energy for approval. And when that clicks, when your days are full, your replies are slow, your eyes are calm, and your time is scarce, something remarkable happens. She leans in. She starts watching. She starts wondering. Not because you disappeared, but because you reappeared in your own life. With fire, with focus, with direction. That's what makes her sit in her room at night and ask herself, what's he doing right now? And that one question, born in the space you created, does more for attraction than 1,000 words ever could. Detachment is not distance. It's distinction. It's presence so powerful you don't need to be present to be felt. Number 3. When you're always available, you become invisible. The harsh truth is this: the more available you make yourself, the less visible you become, not because your presence is unworthy, but because it has lost its weight, its charge, its masculine gravity. And when your presence carries no weight, it blends into the background of her overstimulated world, becoming just another notification in a sea of endless distractions. And the worst part: you think you're doing everything right. You answer her calls immediately. You reschedule your plans without hesitation. You become her safety net, her emotional sponge, her always-on support system. And yet, with every step closer, she takes a step further. Not because she's cruel, but because the mystery that once made you magnetic has dissolved into overfamiliarity, into a predictable rhythm that no longer excites her. And you know this is true when you notice her replies become slower, her tone changes, her affection cools without warning, and you start to feel it. That sense that you're not losing her because you're unavailable. You're losing her because she no longer needs to earn your attention, because what's freely given without qualification becomes expected, not appreciated. And in a world where attention is currency, yours has gone bankrupt in her emotional economy. Imagine you're in a room full of music, laughter, and lights, and there's one sound playing over and over, the same note, no variation, no pause, no suspense. After a while, that note fades from awareness, even if it's beautiful, even if it's well-meaning. It gets drowned out by novelty, and you, man, when you become that note, you stop being noticed, and worse, you stop being felt. And this isn't about playing games, it's about rediscovering your worth, rebuilding the foundation of your identity so that your presence is a choice, not a habit. Because a man whose presence is felt only when he's absent is a man who knows how to pace his energy, how to be a chapter in her story, not the entire plot. And if you want to regain that presence, you have to start by disconnecting from the idea that constant attention equals affection, that immediate replies equal emotional leadership, because they don't. Emotional leadership is the ability to create space, to remain calm when she withdraws, to maintain your path even when she throws emotional storms in your way. And if you find yourself always reacting, always explaining, always rushing to fix what she breaks, then you're not leading, you're leaking. You're giving away the one thing she actually respects, your emotional command. And the moment you pull back, not to punish, but to reset, the moment you start replying when you're ready, not when you're anxious, the moment your time becomes structured again around your personal mission, not her mood, that's when she begins to feel something she hasn't felt in a long time. Uncertainty, wonder, tension, all the things that drew her to you in the beginning. And if you want to rebuild that attraction, stop trying to re-excite her through effort and words, and start re-becoming the man who once walked into the room like he belonged there, the man who had standards before he had desires, the man who could walk away with his head high, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much about never shrinking himself again. Your invisibility isn't about her eyes. It's about how you made yourself too easy to reach, too quick to answer, too afraid to be missed, and that changes now. Number 4, women test your standards. Every woman at some point will test the foundation of a man, not because she's broken, but because she's wired to feel whether the man she's with is firm in his core or bending to her mood. And these tests don't always come in dramatic forms. Sometimes they're subtle, a delayed reply to see if you'll spiral, a sarcastic comment in front of friends to see if you'll apologize for your strength, a sudden withdrawal to see if you'll chase her into a corner begging for clarity. But no matter how they come, they all ask the same question. Is your identity built on self-respect or emotional dependency? And how you respond doesn't just determine her attraction. It defines your relationship's future, because a woman will never fully trust a man she can manipulate, and she will never truly follow a man who follows her instability. And this is where most men break, not because they don't want to be strong, but because they never trained themselves to hold the line under pressure. And if you've ever caught yourself justifying your values to keep her happy, or pretending you're fine with behavior that clearly disrespects your time, your worth, or your mission, then you weren't loving her. You were negotiating your masculinity. And every time you break your own code to win her comfort, you teach her one thing. Your principles are conditional, and respect dies when your standards fluctuate for attention. Now picture this. You're walking with her, and she mentions another man who gets it or understands her better, and you laugh it off, saying nothing. But deep down you feel the sting, and later you write a paragraph explaining how much you value her, hoping your words will anchor her. But all they do is signal that she can move the goalposts of your respect without consequence. And that's not stoicism, that's surrender. Because the man who truly values his energy will not respond to disrespect with logic. He'll respond with distance, not because he's emotionally weak, but because he's emotionally anchored, and no test shakes a man who knows his code, a man who's walked through heartbreak and didn't lose his character, a man who's been tempted by short-term pleasure and still chose long-term self-worth. And if you've been tested recently, good. It means there's still time to reframe what these moments mean. Because every sarcastic jab, every passive-aggressive game, every subtle withdrawal is an invitation to show her who you are when the stakes are high. And if you fold, she will lead. Not because she wants to, but because nature abhors a vacuum. And when you fail to lead emotionally, someone else always will. So how do you pass these tests? You hold the frame. You don't react when poked. You don't rush to explain yourself. You let the tension rise and watch if she escalates or recenters. And in that space, she discovers something rare. Your backbone, your restraint, your clarity under pressure. And no woman forgets a man who cannot be rattled, not because he's cold, but because he's composed. And the key to mastering this is knowing what you will never tolerate, what lines you will never cross for approval, what values you'd rather lose her than betray. And the day you walk away, not because you stopped caring, but because you refused to shrink, that's the day you stop getting tested, because she finally understands. This man is not a project. This man is a pillar, and pillars don't move just because the wind changes direction. Number 5, pulling back is power. She's used to men leaning in. She's used to attention that never runs out, presence that never pauses, love that comes unfiltered and undisciplined. That's her world, a constant stream of men willing to show up, show more, give more, apologize more, wait longer. But then she meets you, and you don't chase, you don't linger, you don't crumble when she pulls away. You don't fold under pressure or abandon yourself to prove devotion. Instead, you pull back, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in self-command. You step away because your energy is not a charity. Your time is not a free-for-all. Your focus is sacred, and she's not the center of your universe. That shift, it changes everything. Because now she feels something she rarely experiences: tension. A man who doesn't flinch, doesn't scramble, doesn't explain himself into vulnerability, just to keep the connection alive. She starts to wonder. She starts to notice. She starts to think. Because your absence isn't loud, but it's felt. And that feeling is what makes her question what she thought she had power over. Think about it. How often have you stayed in a situation where your gut told you to leave? How often did you keep pouring yourself into a woman who gave less every week? Less attention, less respect, less effort. And every time you gave more, hoping it would fix the imbalance, it only made her drift further, because she was watching not your love, but your limits. She was looking for the edge, the boundary that said, "I love you, but I'll walk the second you stop matching my standard." But you didn't walk, you stayed. You chased. You repeated your worth in words, not actions. And that's why it collapsed. But pulling back isn't about quitting. It's about correcting. It's not a retreat. It's a realignment. It's the discipline to stop giving when giving isn't reciprocated. It's the strength to stop explaining when she's already chosen her behavior. Because when a woman sees a man who won't tolerate disrespect, not by yelling, but by leaving, something in her recalibrates. She sees what he values. She feels what she's risking, and that feeling is unforgettable. Imagine a moment where she texts you after ignoring you for 2 days, expecting the usual instant reply and emotional reassurance, and instead, nothing comes. Not because you're playing a game, but because you were building your business, finishing your workout, clearing your mind, and you have nothing to prove. That pause creates space, and space creates intrigue. And intrigue leads her to rethink everything she thought she understood about you. Most men collapse at that fork in the road. They rush in, they explain, they beg, but you don't. Because you understand that your power doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you walk away from. And walking away doesn't mean giving up. It means showing that you never needed her to feel whole. You wanted her, but you chose you. And choosing yourself in a world that constantly tells you to pour endlessly into someone else is the rarest kind of masculine strength. This is what power looks like. You pull back when respect is lost. You pull back when your words are ignored. You pull back when your intuition is screaming that this path leads to self-abandonment. And in that withdrawal, you find yourself again. You remember what matters. You reclaim your time. And that shift, that internal alignment, begins to radiate outward. You walk differently. You speak less but mean more. You show up not with desperation, but with direction. And people feel it, especially her. She may try to provoke you again, bait you into the old emotional rhythm, but it won't work, because you've changed your default setting. You've upgraded from reactive to grounded. You no longer fear the space between responses. You honor the pause. You embrace the stillness, because you know now this is where true value is built, not in giving endlessly, but in knowing exactly when to stop. You've learned that no woman respects a man who refuses to respect himself, and no woman forgets the man who left when she expected him to beg. Pulling back is not passive, it's power. It's the hardest thing to do in the moment, but it's the clearest signal of strength she will ever receive. Because the man who can walk away without closing his heart, the man who can disappear without drama, the man who can continue his mission while letting her feel the weight of his absence, that man is rare. And rare never chases. Rare is watched. Rare is wanted. Rare is what makes her sit in her car staring at her phone, wondering how she lost access to something she thought she could control. You didn't need to convince her. You just left. You let her learn what your presence actually meant, and in that, you became unforgettable. Number 6. Master emotional control. Emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel. It's about mastering how you respond when everything around you tempts you to collapse. When the text you didn't expect arrives at midnight. When she cancels plans without warning. When she flirts in front of you to see if she can shake your certainty. And in those moments, the question is not whether you're hurt. It's whether you still choose to act from clarity instead of chaos. Because most men don't lose their edge from a lack of power. They lose it from a lack of composure, from the belief that if they don't express their emotions instantly, they're somehow being dishonest. But truth doesn't scream. It stands, it breathes, it waits. And the man who can hold his expression like he holds a sword, with restraint, with timing, with discipline, is the man who commands not only attention, but enduring respect. And that respect doesn't come from dominance. It comes from poise under pressure, from knowing that when things get heated, you cool down. When you're misunderstood, you clarify calmly or not at all. When you're blamed, you don't rush to defend, because you understand your value is not proven in how loudly you react, but in how little your essence is disturbed by external chaos. And if you've ever watched yourself lose it, raise your voice, send a message you regretted, explain yourself to someone who already made up their mind. You felt the regret that follows when emotion leads and wisdom lags behind. And that regret, that tightening in your chest after you lost your cool, that's not weakness. That's the echo of your higher self, reminding you that you were meant to be more grounded, more still, more dangerous in your calm than you ever were in your explosions. Now ask yourself, what if, the next time she tested you with distance, you didn't chase? What if the next time she challenged your opinion, you didn't argue, but paused and listened without feeling threatened? What if, when you were hurt, instead of proving your pain with words, You proved your strength by staying present, grounded, unshaken. That's emotional control, not numbness, not silence, but inner power that doesn't need validation to stand tall. And this kind of control is what separates the man she tolerates from the man she never forgets, because she may roll her eyes when you raise your voice, but she'll rethink her behavior when you don't even flinch, and you don't get to that level by accident. You build it daily, in the moments no one sees, in the mental push-ups you do when you're triggered, when your pride is bruised, when your ego wants to strike back, but your spirit says, hold steady, breathe deeper, act only when your mind is clear again. And if you want that kind of power, stop feeding every emotional fire you see. Stop responding to every jab. Stop taking every comment personally, because most things that look like disrespect are really just emotional noise, tests, projections, insecurity dressed up as strength. And when you don't join the chaos, you expose it. And that exposure changes the game, because people around you start recalibrating to your energy, not the other way around. And for every man who's felt out of control, who's wondered why his relationships slip away no matter how much love he gives, the answer isn't to love louder, it's to love smarter. And that starts with not giving your peace away every time you feel provoked, because emotional control isn't passive. It's the art of holding the line, setting the tempo, choosing your moment. And when you do, you become unforgettable, not because you're the loudest, not because you're the strongest, but because you're the most immovable in a world that's always shifting. And people remember the men who stay anchored when everything else drifts, who speak less but say more, who don't need to be understood to feel secure, who don't need to prove anything to protect what they've built. And if you want to be that man, start with one commitment today. I will not react. I will respond, and only when it's worth it, because my energy is sacred, my attention is rare, and my peace is not a bargaining chip for someone else's moment of drama. And when you live like that, when your emotional energy becomes something others have to earn, not something you give away to be liked, you don't just change your relationships. You change your entire identity, because you finally start leading with power, not with panic. And that shift is the beginning of everything you've ever wanted, but never had the self-mastery to claim until now. You've been told to be nice, be always available, to sacrifice yourself for love, and in return, you've been left on red, disrespected, drained, and forgotten the moment you stopped giving. You were never taught the truth. You were never handed the manual that shows you how to protect your energy, how to reclaim your worth, how to lead with quiet power, and never beg for a place in someone else's life. But that ends now, because the Stoic relationship blueprint is dropping very soon, and it's the guide every man should have had from the beginning. This isn't just another ebook. It's the key to freedom. It's the clarity you've needed when you stayed too long, gave too much, or lost yourself in someone who never valued you. It's built for men who are done being emotionally disposable, for men who are ready to rise. If you've ever questioned your worth after being ghosted, doubted your strength after being tested, or lost your focus chasing validation that only left you emptier, this blueprint is your reset. Support this mission. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue giving these life-changing insights to the men who need them most. And if you're serious about changing your life and rewriting your relationships from the ground up, comment Blueprint. If you want me to send you this ebook the moment it drops and completely transform your life and relationships,